So, congratulations first.
Thank you.
On your retirement.
Thank you, Eric.
Now, I got two conflicting numbers. Is it 42 years in television? And it was at like 30, roughly about 37, 38 with KDKA?
You got your numbers perfectly straight.
Okay.
Yeah, 37 of those 42. So, in other words, all but 5 were spent here in Pittsburgh.
Okay. Now, if my information is correct too, you got your start initially playing football at Tennessee, and were you a defensive end? Is that correct?
I was.
Okay.
I was a defensive end. I was 6'1", 210 pounds.
Okay.
And I ran a 4.9 40, which is not particularly fast. It's average. But that was back when a relatively slow, small white guy could still play Division I football. Honestly, Eric, I think today if I was coming out of high school, out of Bearden High School in Knoxville, Tennessee, which is where I played and was the team captain and all that good stuff, I would have gone to a Clarion or an IUP or
Gotcha.
I don't think I'd have played for a Tennessee.
Just because of the incredible talent of athletes today. They're bigger,
just
they're stronger.
another level.
Absolutely.
And bigger, stronger, and still faster.
Okay. So you came out with were you a theater major? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was the only guy on the football team who was also on stage during the week and on the field on the weekends.
Okay. And if again, your first TV job, I think was, if I understand it correctly, was in Knoxville. Is that correct?
In my hometown, right there in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Okay.
Yeah. I went to work for WTVK, Channel 26. It was a UHF station at the time.
Okay.
It's no longer in existence. Its call letters have been changed. But anyway, I worked for TVK for 3 years, was it, Deb? 77 to 80. And then moved to Louisville for a couple of years, and then to Nashville for a year, and then boom, came to Pittsburgh.
When you got the job initially, when you were in college and you were a theater major, did you already have your eye on doing television, or you basically graduated and that was an opportunity and you just kind of went for it?
Yeah, I got out of school and I went straight to work at McDonald's. Seriously, that was my first job, and thank God for Mickey D's.
Understood.
That they fed Debbie and I for 6 or 8 months at least. It was short. Yeah, my wife Debbie's here in the studio.
Sure, absolutely, and welcome. Thank you for being
here. But you may notice that my voice is already starting to go, and this is one of the reasons.
Really?
I don't want to change subjects on you too much, but one of the reasons why I retired was I started realizing, and maybe it's just a factor of age, Eric. I'm not sure, but about midday, my voice starts to go.
Okay.
And I just, by 10 or 11 o'clock at night, I got almost no voice. And then it comes back the next day, but doesn't last for long. So,
well, you've been talking for a heck of a long time publicly, my friend.
Well, you're right.
That's pretty much understandable.
All right, so where were we? Sorry, we were.
That's okay. So you went to Kentucky. No, excuse me. You went to, was it Nashville?
No, you were right. I went to Louisville, Kentucky after Knoxville.
Okay, and then you went to Nashville.
Knoxville for 3 years, Louisville for a year and a half, Nashville for 1 year, and then to Pittsburgh.
Okay, so you went to Nashville for was it Evening Magazine or was it PM Magazine?
Yeah, well, it was in most cities outside of the Group W or Westinghouse markets, which Pittsburgh was. Of course, KDKA at one time was owned by Westinghouse. The show was called, out in the rest of the country, it was called PM Magazine. But in the Westinghouse markets, it was known as Evening Magazine. So it was the same show, different hosts, and slightly different stories maybe, but the same format nationwide.
Would each station have their own host and their own show?
Yes.
But so the format was kind of syndicated, but each news station, each city had their own host and their own show.
Exactly, and the shows would vary because the hosts were different, but also because the story lineup would be different. You'd have local stories in Pittsburgh that I wouldn't that I wouldn't carry in Nashville. Although if a story went national. If it got syndicated and spread out across the country, it eventually would air in Nashville.
Sure. Okay.
And all over the country.
So you did this for 1 year in Nashville, and do you remember how the opportunity came to you? How you were presented to come to Pittsburgh?
I got a call from a woman who is still in Pittsburgh. Jane Adair was her name, and she was the program manager for KDKA and ran the Evening Magazine show up here.
Okay.
Liz Miles, Dave Durian had been doing the show for 5 years, I think, before I got here, And so in 1980, late 81, early 82, they called me and they said, Dave is, I forget if Dave was going into news or he was getting out, he was leaving.
Okay.
And they wanted to know if I'd be interested in coming up to replace Dave Durian as the male host of Evening Magazine. That was one of the, in those days, that was just the way it was done. Now, today I can see there being two women or two men as hosts, but in those days it was a male and a female. So I said absolutely. At the time, Eric, Pittsburgh was the number 9 market. We were 9th in the nation in terms of our market size.
Okay.
And so it was a huge jump. Nashville was 28th or 29th, and so I was making that jump, and I got a big pay raise and an extended contract, and it was a wonderful move for me, and it's so wonderful that in fact I've stayed.
You did.
27 years later, we're still here. You're still stuck with me, Pittsburgh.
Do you remember any initial impressions that had stuck in your mind from moving from Nashville to Pittsburgh?
No Southern accents.
True, although we have our own unique way of speaking here.
there is that Pittsburghese that I never did quite master, but it's the differences in the markets in the cities. Pittsburgh's just a big Nashville. In fact, now Nashville is, if I'm not mistaken, a larger TV market than Pittsburgh.
That's my understanding.
I think it's grown exponentially over the last few years and is now one of the major markets in the country. Not just because of the Tennessee Titans or Vanderbilt, or they've just grown. That part of the state has exploded.
Outside of our language differences, it almost is a whole new language in Pittsburgh. But besides topography, obviously,
I felt right at home.
Okay,
right at home, and I'll tell you why. Number one, I'm a huge football fan.
Okay.
Not necessarily, well, I am now, but when I came here, I wasn't a huge Steelers fan.
Sure.
But I certainly was a Tennessee Vols fan. We didn't have the Titans weren't in Tennessee at the time, so I didn't really have a pro team that I wanted to pull for until I moved here.
Right.
But the other thing that the similarity is, number one, the topography, the geography. We're both mountain towns. I mean, Nashville, not so much as Knoxville, my hometown, which is right on the side. It's the edge of the Smokies, Smoky Mountains. In fact, Debbie and I just finished hiking Mount LeConte.
Oh, really?
Anybody who's a Smoky Mountain fan, Smoky Mountain Park will know the hike up to Mount LeConte. It's the highest overnight lodge east of the Rockies. And 6,500 feet, you're up, and we just finished hiking that, and I think we got one more in us.
Okay.
I've done 6. Deb's done 4 climbs up the big hill, as we call it, and so we'll be hopefully doing that one more time before we retire from hiking. But anyway, how did I get there? Oh yeah, just talking about the topography, and the topography makes Pittsburgh and Knoxville, and even Nashville to a certain extent, although Nashville is up on what's called the Cumberland Plateau. It's not as hilly as Pittsburgh or Knoxville. But it makes the people very similar. I've always felt like Pittsburgh was just a big Knoxville. And the people are generous and helpful and kind, and the topography is so similar. It's crazy. I mean, I can drive around here and feel like I'm in Knoxville.
Except for the snow.
You're exactly right. I mean, we get a little snow a big snow in Knoxville is 2 inches.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, a big snow.
Right.
That'll put them out of commission. Because, for one thing, Eric, it only makes sense that they wouldn't have much, if anything, in the way of snow removal equipment because they get so little.
Right.
So if they do get a 2-inch snow, it's the equivalent of a blizzard.
Absolutely right.
It just paralyzes
Absolutely
them.
right. I get that for sure. Having family down south, I've experienced it on vacation at times because we would want to go down there in the rough months. And once in a while, they get a dusting down in the Carolinas.
Yeah,
and they get a dusting and the place just shuts down.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as it starts coming out of the sky, it shuts down.
Right. And it's not because they're wusses or they can't handle, it's just that they don't have the snow removal equipment that we've been blessed with, that we've paid for over the years with our taxes.
Yes, we have.
But you got to do what you got to do, and it allows us to get around.
I went through a bunch of vignettes from Evening Magazine, I spent some time going back, and there's surprisingly a lot on YouTube. If you haven't really done a deep dive on yourself, you might want to do that.
I have not.
You'd be surprised what's out there. One of the things that
was back when I had hair, right?
That unfortunately happens to all of us, my friend.
Oh, not all.
You mentioned that you enjoyed the travel aspect of Evening Magazine for some of the shows,
Sure.
some of the shows that you folks aired. And you also said you were blessed that they encouraged you to write yourself into the shows and make yourself and your personality become part of the show, which I think endeared you to the people of Pittsburgh.
They did. Yeah, I mean, that was part of the gig. And let's do the travel part first. Oh,
Sure.
my gosh, Eric, I got to see the world.
Wow.
And for a little hillbilly kid from East Tennessee, it was incredible to find myself in Germany and Hawaii. And I mean, we went everywhere, Deb, except what? Japan. We never got there. Never got to China.
Much in Asia.
Not much, yeah. Deb's right. Nothing over in Asia,
Right.
but man, everywhere else. I was, from the North Pole, which I went to.
You went to the North Pole?
North Pole, yep. To the Vatican. Met the Pope. And I'm not Catholic, but boy, I was that day.
How could you not be being
yeah,
there?
and it was Pope John Paul, and
Right.
What a sweet man.
I saw a vignette of you in Ireland, and you were sitting behind a race car.
Was that in Ireland, Deb?
I thought it might, if my memory serves me correct.
Or it was a car that we were driving on those curvy roads over there. I can't remember, but yes, we did. We went to Ireland and Scotland, and of course Burnett is Scottish, but McCrary on my mother's side is all Irish, and so I'm classic Scots-Irish, and we had great trips to both places.
You had another vignette that I saw where you were doing, and you seemed like you were really enjoying this one, Jon. You were at a massive Jeep jamboree in Northern California.
Yep, Jeep
was that right?
Yeah, that was in the late 80s. I want to say I did that in 87 or 8, maybe 89. It was just the most incredible, it was, I think, 5,000 Jeeps, and it was a remote location. It was a place that you can't go in a regular vehicle.
I think you might have said it was in the Sierras or the foothills of the Sierras.
The Sierra Nevada mountains, and it was all over the mountains. I mean, our main campsite was at the base of one of them, but we spent most of the time driving up the slopes and on trails, really, not roads. And they just you were putting the Jeep to through its paces and challenging the equipment, and they did the job. It was an incredible trip.
So this wasn't really a parade. This was actually taking Jeeps into the mountains and working them as they're supposed to be ridden.
Right, exactly.
As they're intended to be.
Crossing streams and rivers and gullies and high hills, and it was an amazing trip for us. I'm trying to remember one of the. I didn't turn over. We had a couple of guys who did, but I tipped the Jeep a couple of times and thought I was going over, and it was enough to scare the bejesus out of me. But that was a fun trip, and one of my favorite stories.
Okay, I was also asked to ask you about your adventure in parachuting, and I was told that you parachuted and your main parachute did not open.
Right.
Is this correct?
Well, yes. My main. We did what was called. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It was a hand deployed jump, so that you would go out and your jump master would deploy your chute as you were leaving the plane.
Okay.
And the chute would open immediately, and we were low. I mean, we were only at like 3,000 or 2,000 feet, 2,000 or 3,000. Which is not a lot of time. It sounds like a lot, but you're dropping at about, I think, 140 miles an hour at some point when you're at maximum speed.
You're talking to someone that's afraid of heights. I take your word for it.
Oh man, I've had some miserable adventures at heights, and this was one of them. The chute malfunctioned as I was leaving the plane. My arm hit his hand.
Okay.
And because I was backing out, and as I went, my arm hit his hand, knocked it loose from the ripcord, and so there was no main chute came out.
Wow.
I just fell out of the plane, and so I'm falling, Eric, probably for 3 to 5 seconds before I thought, wait a minute, I should be under canopy by now. I should be opened and floating, and I'm still falling like a rock. And so then I started thinking, all right, what do we do? What do we do? And then it hit me, you got to pull your reserve. And we fortunately had gone through this. We'd walked through all the steps, and we talked about it in sort of a mock situation or practice, if you will, for an eventuality like this. And so I just did what I was told and put my thumbs up under my loops on my chest, one on the right, one on the left, and then they told me to hit it hard and it'll pop open. I hit it hard, and nothing happened.
Oh my gosh!
And that's when I peed. That's when I peed myself.
I don't blame you.
So you know what I did? Clearly, from the fact that I'm sitting here, I hit those loops again, one more time, bam! And as soon as I did, the chute came open, and I started instead of dropping like a stone, I started floating, and it was my reserve. It was my small chute, so I knew it was going to be a hard landing, but at least I survived it. And I think.
Did you break an ankle, or did you?
No.
You were okay with that?
No, I mean, yeah, I was sore. My back was sore. My knees were everything from the landing, which was hard, but it was fortunately just right, and it was on grass, and I mean, I didn't have to deal with any trees coming down. It was a great landing.
On one of the vignettes, you were reflecting on your career. You mentioned that you did break your back at one point.
Yeah, that was the paraplane, right, Dib? Yeah.
The paraplane?
Yeah, I flew. I had a thing for. Well, my dad was
danger.
Well, a little bit of that, but my dad was a pilot, and he had a little puddle jumper of an airplane, a little single engine, high wing, no retractable gear or any of that fancy stuff. But he loved it's a tail dragger, and he loved to fly, in and out of grass fields, and so I had spent my life growing up flying into small airports and off of grass fields, friends who had country, had property out in the country.
Sure.
And so I just thought, I mean, I didn't really feel compelled to be a pilot like my dad to get my license, but because I just loved flying with him too much.
Sure.
And he flew with me up until he was, I guess, let's see, we lost Dad in 2015. He was 87, and I know I flew with him up until 2010. So he was, early 80s when he finally gave it up. But I love to fly, and here I had this, this show called Evening Magazine where I could do whatever I wanted, really, in terms of stunts or stories or interviews with people, and so I did a lot of the interviews that I wanted to do with country music stars like George Jones and Loretta Lynn, but I also got to do things like parachute, like flying ultralight. That I had always wanted to do, and unfortunately, the ultralight story was. I mean, the first part of it we shot, everything went fine. The second part of it, I got too close to a line of trees, and I forget. I thought I could clear them, and I turned sort of. I was flying parallel to them, and at one point I just turned left right into them, thinking I was going to be above them.
Got it.
And I didn't get enough lift, and I flew right into the top of the tallest tree in the field, and fell about 75 feet.
Oh my gosh!
To the ground, broke my back.
And they were filming this at the time. Is that right?
Oh yeah. And we used it in the story. People who saw the show will remember it. It was. What, Deb, in 89 or 90? That may have been the last year we did the show, or next to last.
Okay.
But
now, was that a glider?
It was a what were they called? It wasn't a hang glider. It was a paraplane. Basically, Eric, it's not much more than a hang glider with an engine on the back.
Okay.
So I did have an engine.
Okay.
And I did have control, and that was one of the reasons I thought I could clear those trees.
Got it.
And didn't. But yeah, it was all, I want to call it soft structure, but that's not true. It was though, a canopy over a metal structure that, and when I say canopy, I'm just talking about nylon material.
Sure.
That formed the wing, and and then there was a seat hanging underneath, and that was it. You were out there. You were exposed to the. I don't have a fear of heights.
Obviously not.
maybe I should have a fear of heights, but I don't.
Oh my gosh.
Oh boy.
Okay, so
and you know what? I'll never forget my dad after I talked to him, and I told him I'd screwed up and I wish he'd been there, and he wouldn't have done that. And he said, "Son, did you walk away from it?" And I said, "Nope, I didn't, Dad." And he goes, "Well, then it wasn't a great landing, but at least you're alive to talk about it."
He's right. Absolutely right.
The old pilot saying is any landing you walk away from is a good landing.
It's a good landing.
And mine, I did not. I mean, well, actually, I did, but I didn't go far. That's it. I got up. I tried to walk. I realized I was hurt bad back there, and I just got down on the ground. Do
you remember how long the recuperation was for you? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was what, Dib? Maybe a couple of years before I was completely well. And I had to have 2 surgeries down there. So, yeah, it was a while. I had the first surgery post-op was right after the accident, and then what was it, 2 or 3 years later, I guess I had the second procedure.
Okay.
And I've been fine since then.
Good.
Yeah.
If my time is correct, you then started doing double duty for KDKA. You were doing
for a while there. I did well, and actually,
show then, right?
and actually that started, Eric, in 1985.
Okay.
In '85, I was doing Evening Magazine. I started that actually in '82.
Right.
And did it until it was canceled in 1990. But up in '85, I also picked up Pittsburgh Today with Patrice King Brown. And that was our studio show, that the talk show that I did for 5 years with Patrice, and until 1990, which with both shows then were. That was when cable was starting to come into play and was really becoming competitive, and KDKA temporarily got rid of its programming department and just concentrated on news.
Okay.
That was in 1990. Now, about 8 years later, I guess, the late 90s, early 2000s, they came back, KD, with Pittsburgh Today Live.
Right.
Different name, different show.
Now,
but
that was Sorensen?
And I did that show with Christine. Sorensen,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, my partner.
Right, absolutely.
That's what I call her.
Well, let me ask you this. You were quoted as saying that you were very comfortable in the studio environment, with the live studio environment.
Yes.
Talk about that as opposed to filming a show like we're doing here, which is obviously going to be edited and recorded.
Well, see, but you're handling this as though it is live. I feel like we're going out live now. In fact,
maybe someday.
I wouldn't have given it away if I'd been.
Sorry,
you just make them think we're live. But no, there's something to being live. If that's what you're asking, do I enjoy live more? And the answer is yes, because you don't. When you're live, for me at least, it adds an extra push, an extra bit of excitement, energy, if you will, that because you know that you need to try and get it right the first time.
Absolutely.
If you don't, everybody's going to know about it, but just, don't screw up twice.
No. And, I get it completely.
And so there's a little extra pressure with being live, and that's probably why I like it more.
Do you think it was cable they brought it back, I think it was 2005, if what I read was right around 2005, I think you...
Pittsburgh Today Live, you mean?
When you joined them, yes.
When the show came back as Pittsburgh Today Live, they added the word live.
Right.
Now, what was weird about that, Eric, is that the original show was live, too.
I know. And that's what I couldn't figure out
Come
either.
on, damn it. It's like, what? You thought it's like the old show with Patrice was on tape? No. We were live as well. But anyway, so the new show, and I guess they did that just to distinguish it or set it apart from the old Pittsburgh Today.
Is that pretty... When you think about media and news stations, is that pretty much a current theme where they do something, it has success, it might run its course, then they let it lie for a while, and then they kind of bring it back again? Because you see a lot of that, I think, in stations.
Don't you think that that's life in general? I mean, if something worked, then you put it away, you retire it, and then you bring it back again in some other form, maybe. But that could go for marriages, for that matter.
That is true. that is definitely true.
I wouldn't know about that, but...
well, you're better off for it, my friend. Trust me.
Oh, I know that.
Also, I would be neglectful if I did not mention, because I'm sure you won't, you won an Emmy in 95, 96 for a series you did on tornadoes as you were in the era that you were doing weather for KDKA.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes, that is. Right. I'd forgotten about that.
I have to be prepared, that's for sure.
I've forgotten about a lot of things, but fortunately I've got Debbie here to help me out and remind me and keep me on task. Yeah, I did win an Emmy.
You so when your contract, because I think was it PM Magazine was the evening show, right? Or Evening Magazine? Evening Magazine.
It was. That's the confusing thing. But as I tried to explain earlier, in the rest of the country,
right,
it was PM.
Right.
So most everybody in America knew of the show as PM Magazine, but it was locally in the Westinghouse stations. It was called Evening.
Got it.
Magazine.
So when that show ended, you were still under contract with KDKA.
That's right.
And then you
1990.
moved into the weather department.
That's right, because I had done weather before, Eric. I mean, it's almost like it was meant to be, me in Pittsburgh. It's like I came here and I did that wonderful show for 8 years, Evening Magazine.
Right.
And 5 of those years I was doing Pittsburgh Today with Patrice. I mean, that was heaven, and live show in the studio. And then, when it all ended, I was, okay, now this is why I retired. I can't remember where I was going.
Well, you said when it ended, you still, I think, had 1 year left on KDKA.
Oh,
if my information's right.
Yes, that's correct. I still
and
had
the
1 year.
Opportunity was there.
I still had 1 year left on my contract. Yes, thank you.
Sure,
thank you.
sure.
And I had done weather early in my career, and in Knoxville, and also in Louisville, Kentucky. So for the first 5 years of my career, 4.5, I was a weatherman. And
so you started on TV as a weatherman?
Yeah.
That was your first?
Yep.
So you weren't like an on-site reporter. You actually started in weather.
Yeah, and that was back in the mid 1977.
Sure.
When you really didn't have to be, at least in the smaller markets like Knoxville, you didn't have to be a meteorologist.
Got it.
You just had to know what you were talking about, or at least sound like you knew what you were talking about, and look comfortable on camera. And I did that.
That's a very interesting job to me, only because, it's like it's you're blamed for everything, and you're also the hero. You're either the goat or you're the hero.
Yeah, I've gotten used to that.
There's nothing in the middle.
That's right. People either love you or hate you. The truth of the matter is, though, I honestly believe, or at least I convinced myself over time, that nobody really hates me.
No,
they're just kidding me. They're just joking with you.
They're definitely kidding you.
But you can. Your forecast can upset people.
Sure.
And I understand that.
Sure.
I get that. And
sure.
I mean, I never tried to tamp things down or make it or soft sell it or anything. If it was a bad forecast, then that's what it was. But
it's funny because another vignette I found, which is hysterical, is that you are the only, as far as I can research, you are the only TV personality in Pittsburgh that used the word "jagoff" on the air. And it the way you said it, it was so natural. And not offensive in any regard. And it was like, you're all gonna think I'm a jagoff when after I give you this. I guess the storming cover is on its way.
Where'd you find that?
It was on YouTube.
It
was on YouTube. I laughed. It was last evening. I was just prepping again for everything, and I go, oh my gosh, I don't know if you remember that, but it's there.
Well, and see, I guess it's because having not come from here,
sure.
I don't think of jagoff as what's wrong with it? It's not a bad word, is it?
Was wrong with it either, but there's some people that view it negatively, but most people, that's just part of the vernacular here in Pittsburgh.
Right,
you know?
Like jerk or
pretty much. Pretty much.
Well, no, I could say something worse and I won't. See, this is just a lot worse than jack off.
There's a heck of a lot worse than jack off.
Sorry, and I've said it.
Fair enough.
Not on the air, but I've said it.
Fair enough. Oh, I'm sure. Let me ask you this: so you did the live show, Evening Magazine with Patrice King Brown?
Yes. Well, that was with Liz Miles.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and
I'm sorry. You're right.
Today
was in the morning. I'm sorry. The studio show was in the morning. That was Pittsburgh Today. Is that correct?
The old show was from 2 to 3.
Oh, it was an afternoon show.
And then Pittsburgh Today Live started going on at 9.
Okay,
a.m.
So yes,
it
was in the morning. The show with
Patrice
was in the afternoon then.
The afternoon show was with Patrice, and the morning show with Christine.
Okay. Yeah. Do you remember any differences between those two? Because a period of about 15 years, I think, had passed since the time that your show Patrice had ended, and then 15 years roughly, and then now you're back for another stint. Anything stick out in your mind that was different? Audiences, the way things were done, television in general?
Okay. Yeah, we had no live audience with Pittsburgh Today Live.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought it was.
No live audience with PTL.
My memory's not that good either. Okay, then.
But Pittsburgh Today was a live audience, so
Right.
that was the big difference.
Okay. Okay.
The
That needs to come back. You know, that whole live audience, the local live audience, seems to be such a good idea.
Oh, I thought it was. I mean, and it went over great. Although Pittsburgh Today went well too with Christine. And I've always been asked, who did I like working with better? And I said,
that's a
don't
tough one.
ever ask me that question
Yeah.
again. I can't choose between the
Yeah.
two. They're both amazing women, and they
Right.
both took care of me.
Absolutely.
It's like my wife Debbie does.
Absolutely.
I mean, honest to God, it was amazing, Eric, how I could lean on Christine and Patrice and know that both of them would know where we were in the show and what was coming next, and I didn't have to worry about any of that stuff. I could just be, my usual idiot self and have fun, and that's what it was. That show was just such a blast. Evening Magazine was more work. Now it may be the better remembered show. I'm not sure. But it was more. It was not live. It required a lot of work behind the scenes that nobody ever saw.
Right.
Which is not what I'm big on.
Got it,
I kind of like to be out front and be the star. And when you're working behind the scenes, it's
Right.
It's not as rewarding for me. But anyway, I don't know how I got off on that, except to say that Christine and Patrice were both. They still are both angels.
So you're doing a show like that, and so with Pittsburgh Live Today in your time there, tell me a little bit about how that works. You obviously have people behind the scenes that are bringing certain guests on and scheduling, or how involved did you get in the scheduling of the topics, or was that pretty much most was brought to you?
Yeah, that was laid in our laps, and especially for me. Because when I was doing Pittsburgh Today, let's just do the afternoon talk show with Patrice first, if you will. And,
sure.
And if we have time, we'll get to the second show, because they were different. But with Pittsburgh Today, I was doing Evening Magazine. That was my main gig.
Understood.
And that's what I was hired to do, and that's what I was brought up here for. And then in the mid '80s, when John Wade, thank you, Debbie. John Wade left town, just like Dave Durian had done. When John Wade left Pittsburgh Today, that Patrice was doing, I took it on, knowing that that my main gig, and I was told this too, that don't forget, your main job is Evening Magazine.
Okay.
And so I still had to shoot stories and go out and produce them and write them and sit down through the editing process. And see, that was all that stuff that went on behind the scenes that nobody saw.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, but nobody really knows that you've put it in.
Got it.
I mean, they do know if you don't put it in, but we didn't have a choice. We had to. And so all those things were, and that was one of the reasons why, Evening was satisfying. It was a major part of my life, and something that I can't imagine my life without.
Sure.
But it wasn't as much fun as Pittsburgh Today or Pittsburgh Today Live, either one. Pittsburgh Today, the afternoon show, they were both live, but Pittsburgh Today with Patrice had a live audience, and that really, that was right down my alley. I was a theater major.
Right.
For God's sake.
That's where I was going with it.
So it was just like, being on stage every day, literally.
Got it.
And that's what I thrived on. I loved that. And PTL was it was a similar show, but we didn't have that audience energy going that we had on Pittsburgh Today.
But I saw a vignette of you and Patrice on an episode where there was a huge anaconda snake that was brought up, and you were completely on camera. Anyways, you were completely fine.
Oh, I love
Patrice. Patrice was.
I've never seen anyone on camera more frightened than Patrice was, and more out of her element. You would have thought, Eric, that I had brought a grizzly bear on stage.
Oh my!
Or I'm trying a guy with an AK-47 or something. It was just, she was scared to death. Bless her heart.
I wouldn't blame her. That looked like a pretty intimidating snake to me.
Well, it was, but the nice thing about anacondas is that, or pythons, is they're not poisonous.
Right.
And so now,
sure.
now they can bite. They can bite, and so you don't want to get around their mouths.
No.
And they are heavy. But I sat
thing was
there.
Huge,
yeah, and I was holding it, wasn't it? Yeah.
And you were going to show Patrice, and she was having no parts of
She
that.
jumped out of her chair. She ran across the studio. She took off running across the studio. I can remember that to this day. Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, Nothing. I don't think anything has ever startled me that much in my life.
Wow.
She was just genuine, and I felt bad afterwards because I didn't think it would scare her that much.
Sure.
And I didn't think that she would be that out of her skin frightened.
Right. Right.
That's not pleasant to see.
I wouldn't
see
imagine
that happen to somebody.
No, I wouldn't imagine. But that show was also live.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was completely live.
Yeah,
so
completely
anything
live.
goes.
Yeah,
And it's
that's
just,
right. That's right, and I knew it, and and I shoved a python right in her face.
But
only once, only one time.
I'm sure only one time. Every show, do you see it? How does that work? Give us a little look inside that, Jon. Is it you get a whole week's itinerary at the beginning of the week, and you know who's coming on what day, just to you mentally prepare for that? Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah, we did. That's exactly how it happened. And then we would, double up on the night of the show that was coming up the next day. We'd look at the material that had been given us, usually by our producer Jill Neely, at least, and Jill's still there, still doing. She didn't do Pittsburgh Today with Patrice, but she did all of the Pittsburgh Today live shows.
Okay.
With Christine and
sure.
and now with Heather. That's right. Heather Abraham and David Highfield.
Yep.
And just doing a great job, both of them. But
did a guest never show up? Was there ever a time that the guest never showed? Do you remember? Was there ever a time that just for whatever reason, could be weather, could be just they didn't show?
I'm sure we had that. That's the kind of thing, though, Eric, that the producers would take care of for us. I mean, they would either fill in with another guest or they'd tell the one guest that was already booked on the show to go two segments, go longer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
so we would never see it as the audience. You folks would be on making decisions on your feet. And
right.
And your job was to make it look seamless, obviously.
Right. And it was it's not like that was any great task. It was fairly simple to make it seamless because the shows were so well produced and well packaged by people like Jill Neely who just, set everything up for us and basically then lays it in our laps.
Got it.
That's why I liked it so much. It was so easy. It was like a cakewalk. Oh, man.
I'm amazed at how comfortable all of you got. And it was effortless. The banter between...
Well...
It appeared that way to us, obviously, because you folks are so polished and you're so used to working with each other.
Well, maybe experience and polish, as you call it, has something to do with it. But I honestly believe the biggest thing, Eric, was, and I still believe this and always will, was the fact that, excuse me, I was friends with all those people, and that's what I missed most when I retired, and I still do to this day, is those friendships. Now, I miss them so much that I've had lunch with a few of them. Christine and I have been out a couple of times. Brenda Waters and I have had dinner, and she just had back surgery that she's recovering from right now, and I'll be going to visit her in the hospital soon, tomorrow, I think. Right, Deb? And so...
You and Brenda did the weekend mornings?
Yeah, Saturday morning show. Yeah,
okay.
And we always hit it off. Brenda's from North Carolina. I'm from East Tennessee. We're a couple hundred miles apart down there, and both hillbillies at heart, and just had a great time together.
She's on camera saying that you had a certain song that you'd roll into the studio once in a while. And it was I think it was if I have my notes correctly, I think it was a Sly and the Family Stone song? Was it Boom Shakalaka?
Boom Shakalaka, boom Shakalaka, da 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 da.
Woo! I thought I was on the wrong road there for a second. Wonderful.
I couldn't remember if it was that or one of those country songs that I would say. But no, she never cared for that. But she liked the Boom Shakalaka.
Oh, it
was her favorite.
There's so much, but the chemistry again from a viewer, a loyal viewer of KDKA, and just getting so used to seeing all of you there, it seemed like a little family. It came across that way.
No, but that's Eric. You're exactly right, and that's because that's what it was. Exactly what it was. We were, and I've always said that the people at the station, from Ken Rice to Christine to Patrice to Paul Martino, they are all family to me,
right.
and that's what made I can't imagine it being any other way. I can't imagine having spent 37 years,
right,
32 of them. 37 of them here in Pittsburgh, 44, 42 years in all. That's it, 42 in all.
Right.
I can't imagine doing it with people I didn't love.
Mm-hmm.
And I genuinely love these people. And
you were in an era that saw you've watched the careers of so many of your contemporaries too. I mean, there's Patty Burns.
Well, I go
Burns.
back to Bill.
Right, Bill Burns.
And you say that name now, and it's hard to believe, given the legend that he is. But there are people out there now. Bill who?
Right.
Just because time's gone by, and they never really got to see him when he was on the air, much less when he was in his prime. And I was fortunate to do both. When I came here in '82, Bill was still. He wasn't the main anchor, but he still had his chops. He was still pretty sharp, and he was right up until the end. I think Bill he left in 90 or 91, something like that.
Mm-hmm. And you worked with Patty for a while too.
Yeah, loved Patty, and Patty and I were about the same age. She might have been a year older, but so tragic to see her die so young from cancer.
Mm-hmm. She was beloved in this town as well, too.
Oh,
Talk a little bit about the Great Race, because you were involved with the Great Race in Pittsburgh. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I ran 7 or 8 of them.
Wow, I did not know that. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, my greatest pride and joy regarding the Great Race is that my son won it in 2008.
Wow. How about that?
Our son.
How about that?
Eric
Didn't
Burnett.
know that.
Well, and not only that, he is the only athlete in Pittsburgh history to win both the Great Race and the Pittsburgh Triathlon, which he did in 2013.
Okay.
Nobody else has done that.
Okay.
And our daughter's done the Great Race.
So you're a running family then.
Yeah, and Debbie's done it. We've all done it. All done the Great Race, and that is that's just
I did not know that.
Such a spectacular event that's so well run and participated in. Pittsburghers love that event.
There's no question.
Yeah.
So I hope this does not get you emotional, but you had 2 amazing days. I would assume earlier this year you had the Allegheny County provide you a proclamation, and then the city council. I think it was June 1st. Is that right? Jon Burnett Day in Pittsburgh.
Yes, Jon Burnett, June
JB
1st.
Day.
You're right. You're right. That's so crazy, Eric. I'm thinking, who? Me?
Absolutely.
What?
Absolutely.
Why? What did I do? I mean, come on. It was. It was. I was pretty tongue-tied the whole time, and
I thought you were very eloquent in both instances when you spoke.
Well,
I thought you were
you're
extremely
kind.
humble.
I don't remember what I said. but I'm glad it wasn't offensive to many.
Well, no, and I think if I'm mistaken, I think the city council kept that as a surprise for you, because you were there to maybe promote and talk about the Great Race. Is that how they got? Is that how they got you
that's
there?
what I thought. That's what I thought.
That's pretty clever.
And
that's
then,
pretty clever on their behalf. I have to give it for politicians. That was pretty clever.
Yeah, well, somebody with the Great Race, and I'm trying to remember who. Oh, that's right, Mary Beth Mueller. God bless her. I started to say Larry Kuzmanko, and that shows you how far back I go with the Great Race. You remember Larry? Anyway, yeah, Mary Beth Mueller, who runs the Great Race and works for, what, P3R? No, she works for City Parks. Or works for City Parks. City Parks, that's right. Anyway, she had me thinking that I was going up there for something other than what I was going up there for, and I was completely fooled. But it was cool. I love surprises, and you were surprised. It looked like it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, totally.
Mary Rob Jackson is on camera stating that she would hope that you will stay away from extreme sports so you can live out a long retirement. So do you want to maybe shed a little light on what that meant?
Well, Robbie was around. Mary Rob, who of course was married to Michael Chalik, who was one of our top photographers for many years at KDKA, and they both. worried about me because I did these stunts, jumped out of airplanes, flew ultralights, crashed ultralights, broke my back and ribs, and anyway.
Not a lot of fear in you, huh? Personal injury fear.
I think there's a. Well, if you've played Division I football at any time in your life, I just think that. The idea of getting injured. Now, I don't want to die. I don't have a death wish.
No, of course not.
But I've been hit a lot harder by offensive tackles and fullbacks who were trying to block me than most people have ever been hit in their entire lives and or ever will. And so I think, I don't know. It's just part of who I am. It's not. I don't know. Do I act like a tough guy around you? Debbie said no.
I have given up the extreme sports.
And I have given up the extreme sport. That's right. I mean, I'm 65. I've even given up, I hate to say this, and this will be the first time I've admitted it publicly, but I haven't ridden my motorcycle now in 2 years, I guess. Yeah. I woke up one morning, and nobody wants to hear this, but real quick. I woke up one morning, every joint in my body was on fire. I contracted what I later learned is something called reactive arthritis.
Okay.
And it was either reaction to the flu shot or to pneumonia, both of which came rapidly back to back about 3 years ago in 1916, yeah. Or 2016, excuse me. It seems like 1916 since I caught that damn disease. Anyway, woke up and every joint in my body was just on fire, and I have not been able to ride my motorcycle since. I've gotten the arthritis under. It's manageable, but it's still there. It's always there.
Okay.
And I'm just nervous about getting on the bike again.
Because of the tense nature of bracing yourself on a bike.
And you do. It's amazing how physical riding a motorcycle really is. You don't think it is, but you and your muscles. The guys that you see that are riding in old age have been doing it for 50 years.
Right.
I mean, it's something that's just their muscle memory is so good that even though they've gotten older, they're still able to keep the bike up and keep it in between the lines. I just did not feel comfortable once I got that arthritis and once I was sore all the time. I didn't feel comfortable with the challenges of riding anymore.
Sure, understood. I think of motorcycles in KDKA. The first name that came to my mind was John Cigna.
Sure.
Did you know John?
Oh, we were best buddies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Siggy was.
So I think that's so cool. The television in that era, I guess, things are all split up now, but in that era, KDKA was under Westinghouse's umbrella, both the radio and the TV.
That's
correct?
Right. We both were. Yes.
So there was natural mingling, and you folks were a team.
And
right?
I went up to radio, and I would jump in on his show all the time. I called him the older brother.
That's my next question. That's my next question.
I called John the older brother I never had and never wanted.
That's great.
Anybody who knows John Cigna, can you imagine? Other than Pat, God rest her soul, his wife, his beautiful, long-suffering wife. Can you imagine living with that man?
Boy, he was a character.
Oh my God! And he was in real life too. I mean, just wasn't on the radio.
John was John.
He was John.
Yeah.
And he made no bones about it. God love him.
And you were there for Fred Hansberger's part of Fred's career. Is that right?
Yeah. I knew Fred well, and John, and who else?
Did Jack Bogut, had he left KDKA?
No, Jack was here.
Jack, in the beginning?
I knew Jack.
Because he was a Pittsburgh icon.
Yes, he was. Yeah. And Jack did some television. He didn't he do a piece occasionally for Evening Magazine, it seems like.
I remember seeing him on the television. I remember seeing Jack.
Yeah.
Rarely, once in a while on the TV.
Yeah, not often. But now John was always radio only.
Was he always on all the time? Like whether you were out having a beer or you're out having dinner, or was he always on? Because it seems like he's always on.
Most of the time.
Okay.
And the occasions when he wouldn't be, you would almost worry about him.
Okay.
It's like, is he getting sick? Is he sad about something? What's going on?
Understood.
He's not his usual jovial, crazy, idiotic self. and when that would happen, I would worry about him.
But you did jump on the radio once in a while. as well for KDKA.
Yeah. Well, I would actually, Eric, what I did, because radio and TV back then, it's different now, but radio was right upstairs. And I could go up there was a fire escape ladder that went up to radio into Jon's studio. And it was the escape hatch out of the back of the studio. If there'd ever been a fire in radio, they would have come out of that door in the studio and down the ladder into the TV studio and out the side door into Gateway Plaza.
Got it.
Because radio was on the second floor and TV was on the first. Anyway, I would go up there, and it was one of my favorite things to do was to, wait until, Jon was on from 6 a.m. until 9 or 5 a.m., I guess, until 9 most mornings. And I, on those days, especially when I would come in early and do the weather early or do Pittsburgh Today, which went on at 9 with Patrice, I would climb up not every week, not every month even, but at least 6 or 8 times a year.
Right.
I would climb up the ladder to this landing that was right outside the radio studio door, the back door.
Okay.
It was the escape hatch, we called it. And I would just bang on it. Just pound on it, knowing that he was in the middle of, either a live commercial or a live interview, or he was just riffing on the air and being his usual hilarious self, and it would make him so mad. And it would, for one thing, it would give him a heart attack. It would scare the bejesus out of him. And I love doing that and other little games with him. And
the Children's Hospital Drive that KDKA did, was that primarily the radio function, or was it the radio and television?
No,
as well?
it was a combined effort.
Okay.
And both sides still, I guess, I'm not sure what the role of TV is now with the telethon, but there was a time when they both separately raised money and then pooled it, I think, at the end.
Okay. And every year there was at least,
it was huge.
And they used to have, someone would bake tarts or whatever. I think it was Cigna or Bogut. They would, every year they have a different name for it. There was Farkleberry.
Yeah,
it was always some kind of corny name for it. That was Jack?
That was Jack, right. The Farkleberry stuff was. And I think Cigna maybe glommed onto or played off of it. And I mean, anytime you brought food into the studio, it was going into Jon's mouth. You could just, Fred too, for that matter.
But KDK had some characters.
I was going to ask you, how can you be so trim and fit for a...
Me?
Yeah. Well,
I didn't think of this morning when I got on the scale.
Do you remember John Cigna and Fred Hansberger?
Yeah, they were big men.
Big boys.
They were big men for sure. No question about it. I do remember. And,
God.
They were... you're part
I loved them both.
You're part of such an amazing institution in the town. Again, it's not anything against Channel 4, Channel 11. Fine people there too. They have their own little legacies. But there's always was something about KDK. They were the big dog in town. They had the wattage. They had the top personality.
Well, 4 and 11 have both had their share. I mean, look at Sally Wiggin over at Channel 4.
Sure.
Stan Savrin when he was there, and
some great people.
David Johnson at Channel 11, and Peggy Finnegan. We've all had our share of talented performers.
No question.
But you're right, and I obviously am a little biased. But,
sure, you have a right to be.
KDKA has this history of that I'm not quite sure. I don't think the other guys have. Maybe they do. Maybe I missed it before I came here back in 1982 back in the dark ages. But I mean, I honestly, I'll be honest with you. I just know that before I came here, I think Channel 2 was even bigger.
You think?
Well, I know radio was. Radio didn't have as much competition as it does now. And so, the pie is sliced so many more ways than it was back in the 30s and 40s and 50s when KD radio was just the god.
That can be heard all over the country practically with the power of the wattage.
The nation's station.
That's right. I forgot that slogan.
Yep.
The slogan, too, that you folks used to use on the air in the 70s and 80s, which I thought was great. And it I don't know if it's said anymore, but Pittsburgh someplace special. That was a KDKA slogan, right?
I remember. Yeah, I do remember that. And I don't know if that was radio or TV or both. Usually we were very separate, surprisingly.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Well, different management. except at the very, very top.
Okay.
I mean, they were both owned by Westinghouse and then by CBS. But different management locally.
Got it.
You know, the radio had its own GM and producers, and TV had their own. But
KD Country was another one that I think you said it a lot.
Yeah.
During the weather, I think in KD Country.
Yeah. Now that was a TV phrase.
Okay.
That I think radio glommed onto.
Okay.
I think, but I'm almost positive that TV was going with that phrase first, and that was a good one.
That was a very good one.
KD Country. Yeah.
Yeah. It was so good because Pittsburgh, I think, from a marketing standpoint, it obviously branded KDKA. But also talk about the entire. It's almost taking ownership of the Pittsburgh people, which is great.
Sure, which is what we wanted to do, you know, and we were always struggling, not struggling, but efforting, if you will, to include everybody.
Sure.
To speak to Clarion County and Washington and Bedford County as much as we were Allegheny County.
Right.
Realizing, of course, that our hub and that the largest source of population was right here in Allegheny County, but you needed more than that to win the ball game.
So when you moved here in '82, how long did it take before, or did you ever become a Steeler fan?
Oh, instantly.
Okay.
Yeah. But again, now remember,
you came in some lean years initially when you got
here. Yeah, but that's okay.
They were lean.
I'd never been in a pro town.
Okay.
I'd moved around. I was in Knoxville, Louisville, Kentucky, and Nashville, Tennessee. Did you notice I said Vol and not Ville? You did.
Louisville. I've been corrected many times on the appropriate way to say that.
I just said it correctly.
I know you did. I usually don't.
It is not Louisville.
Right.
And even in that, you go to Nashville and you'll never hear of Ville. It's all Vol.
Vol.
Yeah, it's almost all. It's not quite Vol, which is more like Vols, but it's Vol.
Okay.
Nashville, Knoxville. I don't know why. Why is that? Because it is Ville, and it should be Ville.
Well, they lived there, so we got to let them say it the way they want.
That's true.
But you became a Steeler fan right away?
Immediately.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that was a no-brainer. And it wasn't just because I worked at KDKA. It was because, you know, when I came here in '82, we were coming off the championship years. Terry was still here. Franco was still here. I mean, Jack Lambert was here.
Right.
And they were a god. That team was a god.
Absolutely.
In their own heaven, in their own stratosphere, you know. And how could you not pull for them? No, it was an amazing opportunity for me to go from my Tennessee Volunteers to Pittsburgh Steelers, and of course I'm now fans of both. And
sure,
always
nothing
have
wrong
been.
with that. Did you ever sit back and amazed at how Pittsburgh and Pittsburghers are so entrenched? Their identity almost is attached to number one, the football team, and to a lesser extent the Penguins and the Pirates, believe it or not, as well. But there's an identity with sports in this town through Pitt, from a distance, Penn State. It's such. Would you not agree that the identity of a lot of Pittsburghers are based upon their sports and their sports performance?
I don't think there's any question, and I think, I mean, you know, I don't want to step on anybody's toes here, but I think one of the reasons why we've been such a sports-driven town is because of the steel industry. Because of the masculinity, if you will, of the region, and when I say masculinity, I'm letting that apply.
Understood.
To the girls and the boys.
Absolutely. Broad shoulders.
Broad shoulders for men and women.
Absolutely.
Tough people living up here. Tough people who've been through a lot of them, or if they haven't, their ancestors have hard times. And I don't know. There's something about sports that is uplifting and regenerative, and it sort of pulls you out of the depths of your trials and tribulations, no matter where you are in life, and I think that really has appealed to Pittsburghers from time immemorable.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think especially in that 70s, going into the early 80s, where it was just such a late 60s too, just a big blue collar town.
Yeah,
and they could identify and And it just, sometimes in life I think it's just timing, and all the pieces have to line up. And it just seemed like the right collection of guys were on that team in the era that this town needed them.
Right.
And they just happened to be pretty darn good.
Yeah, exactly. And when you brought them together as a team, they were better than good.
There's no question.
They were the best, the world's best.
And we were so lucky, and then for Mario Lemieux to become part of Pittsburgh. We've really been, Pittsburgh's been blood. For a sports fan, especially a child growing up in the 70s as I was, it was a pretty impressive time.
So you don't remember Roberto Clemente, do you?
My first recollection, I've been told that I went to a couple games. My first recollection of Roberto, my only recollection was, I want to say it was some game in the 71 season here at Three River Stadium, I guess the Mets. And that's vague. It's a shame. It's a real shame.
Were you old enough though? I mean, to
I was. I would have been five.
Really
I would have been five. And I remember going there with my father and being told of the legend.
Well, and think how blessed we've been though, Eric, with our teams. Every one of our teams, baseball, hockey, football, has won world championships.
Right.
Every one,
right.
and I guess in all three multiples in all three sports.
Mm-hmm.
Can any other city say that?
I don't think so. And they all kind of did it all in a similar time frame. Take about 3.5 decades. They all were winning in those.
Yeah.
And so, right. So people that have lived their life in Pittsburgh in this time frame have seen it all. They've seen Super Bowls. They've seen World Series. They've seen. It's incredible.
Stanley Cup playoffs.
And the hockey, I think, sometimes doesn't get as much publicity as it should in this town. But my goodness. I mean,
see now, for a kid coming from the South, hockey never had any appeal to me whatsoever until I came to Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And I can't begin to no. In fact, I'll just tell you outright, I'm nowhere near the hockey fan that I am baseball, or especially football.
Sure.
But I'm a hockey fan, and it's great to have that third sport to stay with you, to keep things going throughout the year. There's always something going in the sporting world around here. There is. And then our son Eric is so involved in especially was involved. Now he's got this business going, but he was involved in cross country and track. He ran for Pitt.
Wow.
And he competed nationally, and that is another sport that was a favorite of mine.
The track and field. So that was an interest of yours when you were growing up?
Yeah, I mean that's really where I started, because I was long and lean early in my life. I was tall. I was always tall, but I was skinny at first, and so the natural sport for me to gravitate toward was track, and I would do middle distance 400, 800 meter races. Back then we called them the 440 and the 880.
All right.
But football came fairly early for me. I think the first year I played, I was in 5th grade, and then all the way through high school and college, and tore my ACL against Alabama in 1974. And back then, ACL tear was a career ender, and that was it.
You hear ACL in football, it's part of the regular conversation anymore.
Oh yeah,
it's just,
well,
it's
and
incredible.
guys have 2 or 3 ACL repairs and keep coming back. We're done now. Guys have their scars are like
small incisions.
They usually have 2 incisions about this long side by side, and they come back the next year or 2 years later.
Yeah, it's amazing, especially in this town too. UPMC and all the quality of the doctors. And it's incredible.
And then, not to take away from the care that I was getting in Knoxville, it was good, and we had good hospital systems, but not like here.
Yeah.
This place is, we take for granted, I think, how blessed we are to have this kind of hospital care and medical supervision, if you will, of our lives. It's amazing.
It is.
And the doctors that are available up here are as good as any in the world.
I would absolutely agree, and I think even speaking broader, I think Pittsburgh's blessed with the amount of high quality education here. I mean, the quality of the universities that are in this town are just amazing. It is amazing.
Yeah, and, I mean, CMU, Duquesne, Pitt, Robert Morris. It just goes on, and then the surrounding schools that are excellent as well.
Let's turn to, before we wrap up here, I want to turn the corner for a second. I want to get your thoughts on broadcasting today. And do you still think there are opportunities for communication majors? I guess there's actually broadcasting majors now. People coming out that want to get into television, they want to get into radio, they want to get into news, hard news.
Yeah.
Do you think there's still opportunities there, or do you think everything's just so specialized now? And do you still think there are opportunities?
I think there are. I think there may be more than ever.
Okay.
Look what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And you're doing a damn fine job, by the way.
I'm a novice friend, but that means the world to me. Thank you.
No, that's not. But
thank you.
Well, you're not acting like one. You're not interviewing me like one. You've kept me talking and made me comfortable the whole time.
Thank you, sir. That means a lot. Thank you, Jon.
And I'm just telling you that you're good at what you do, and this studio is beyond belief.
Oh, thank you.
Can they see it?
They can. Yeah, they can. We'll have wide angle views.
Oh. Who's ukulele, by the way?
I used to sell those when I was at Washburn. I kept a few.
No kidding.
Some of the guitars in here were things that we did.
My dad played ukulele.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was the only musical instrument he could play. He could sing. He had an amazing voice and heard harmony. Debbie hears harmony.
That's a gift.
Debbie and my dad.
That's
my
a
God.
gift.
And we would sing songs. Sorry.
That's okay. It's his show.
What was one of the favorite songs we used to sing? Come on, you and me and Dad. In the pines, in the pines, in the pines, where the sun never shines, and I shiver when the cold wind blows.
All right. Got a performance and everything.
But that's nothing. That's nothing compared to.
That's all right.
To when my dad would join me on the high part.
Okay.
And Debbie would join me. And did we ever have a bass? Anybody on the bottom? No, it was just three high voices.
3-part harmony.
3-part harmony.
No. I was asking you, do you still think there's opportunities for people coming out of school
that
want to get into it?
Sure there are. I mean, I think they're changing, they're adjusting, and they're expanding in some areas, Eric, and they're contracting in others to fit the times. I mean, Pittsburgh Today Live, for instance, let's just use that as one example, has never been bigger or better. I wish to God that Christine and I had the promotion and had the money that they are now putting into PTL with David Highfield and Heather Abraham, two great talents and very, very gifted performers who are great together, who have good chemistry. But, Christine and I had good chemistry too.
Right.
But we didn't have that kind of promotion.
Right.
And the support, just the set and the places they go, and the people who come on, they're bringing in bigger and better guests. And anyway, now
the web, do you think helped that? I mean, because the web came around in 2006, and then the media, I think as the internet grew and got faster, then you could start watching videos. And do you think are they benefiting now from the extra advertisement that you can do on the web as well as television?
Possibly. That's a good point. And certainly PTL is now, the name is much more branded and much more out there than it has ever been, because obviously the station has realized that it's a moneymaker and that nobody else in town really has anything quite like it.
But you folks built that.
Oh yeah,
you had a big part in that.
Well, Patrice King Brown and John Wade actually were the builders of it, and then I came on board with Patrice, and then Christine and I had a few good years together before turning it over to David and Heather, and so the banner keeps getting passed on, but it's a moneymaker of a show, and I think it always will be, unless the competition steps up and does something better. And so far they haven't. The business is changing. Obviously the web has made a difference, the internet. I hate to say this, but I don't even know if my children, if Debbie and our kids, Eric and Samantha, I don't know if they watch TV anymore. That generation, that 25 to 40 generation, are they watching TV?
Neither one of them has cable anymore.
They neither have cable.
That's a trend.
And I don't, and they get their news on their phone. And so, with that being the way of the world, I don't know what's coming next, Eric. I hope TV will find a way to adjust and adapt and flux and flow and go with the tide. But
well, the newspapers have, and I think KDKA. I can't.
Yeah, but what? Okay.
Well,
now you got me started. What's going on with the newspapers? The PG's down to 3 days a week? How can you publish a paper 3 days a week and call yourself a newspaper?
I don't know. I know that they're trying to. I don't know how their online subscription sales are. I would have no data on that. But I know that they're being pretty aggressive. If you get a couple free articles and all of a sudden if you go to read another one, you must subscribe. So I'm assuming that's how they're selling their subscribers now.
So is that there are that many people who read the entire newspaper online?
I don't know if it's the entire newspaper, but I think elements of it, yes, I think so. It's probably a big transition for them too, though. It's got to be a big transition.
It's got to be.
And it's a shame. And I think our generation is looking at it as like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine there not being a physical printed newspaper
in my driveway every morning,
because we're so used to that's part of our life,
right?
But like you said, our children and their children are probably, they've got it here. They've got it on a device. Right. They're on their computer screen.
That's right.
And I guess I don't knock it anymore. I mean, this show is actually internet only. So the audible version or the audio version will be available on Apple and Google, but the video will be on YouTube and Facebook and Vimeo, and it's a completely different paradigm.
So
it's just so different.
How did you find this little gem of a show that you've created, and what gave you the brain? What was the?
I don't know if it's a brain thing. I think sometimes boredom, out of boredom can come some great ideas, and I had reached a point in my life where I wanted to do something different, and the one thing
what were you doing?
Well, I'm a realtor, and I was in the guitar business many years ago, and I started to do a little radio show, John, in Beaver County on WBVP on Saturdays. Yeah. The station owner, like 4 years ago, heard me reading my own commercials, and he said, "Eric, you have a pretty good voice."
You really do.
Well, thank you. Yeah. He said, "Why don't you come on my station and see about doing your own real estate talk show once a week?" And I loved it, and then it turned into a 1 hour to a 90-minute to a 2 hour to a 2.5 hour, and we started talking sports and variety.
More than just real estate.
Absolutely, because that was real estate's a little bit much every week to keep. Yeah. But it just grew a life of its own, and then I started watching a lot of podcasts, on subjects that were interesting to me. And there was a gentleman in California, Joe Rogan, had a big podcast, and I love the format. I just love people and the conversations. Yeah. And I said, well, how about if we take the concept and bring it to Pittsburgh instead of a national show? Why don't we just try to talk to people who've made their mark in Pittsburgh and get their story in a relaxed kind of environment? And that's just knock on wood, so far so good.
So that's your theme every week.
I do hopefully do 2 or 3 a week if we can get there. But we try to do it. We want to keep it interesting. It's open genre except politics. I will do every other subject except politics. So it's sports, broadcasting, business, medicine.
Good.
But it's interesting how many people in Pittsburgh have really become a part of this town, such as yourself, who've left a legacy here. And you coming on here and telling your story it's just wonderful. It's giving people an opportunity to know more about you beyond what they experienced, and because they've let you come into their home every day for all these years,
and that's been the privilege of a lifetime for me. But I have to tell you, in all honesty, the real legacy here is right there. Mm-hmm. She taught for 25 years in a public school in this city, and we have been blessed by the way teachers are treated in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. Do you realize that a teacher in Western Pennsylvania makes about double what a teacher in East Tennessee makes?
I do know that.
And they're worth every penny of it.
Absolutely right.
Every penny.
Yeah.
So
it's the truth.
That's the legacy over there.
Well, that is a very kind statement.
Well, I mean, think about how many people, how many young kids she's
touched. It's the most important job in society.
It is.
We need doctors, we need policemen, and so forth. But
amen to that.
But without a doubt, and we need our military and all the people that serve.
Yeah.
My deepest gratitude is always there. But I always kind of in my mind single out teachers, especially especially at the high school, middle school, and grade school levels. That to me, and at times I don't think we treat them as well as they should be treated as a society.
Yeah.
I think, and I always believe that they're doing the true duty, because that is the future of our way of life, of our people.
Right.
So my little soapbox, but that's just always how I felt about it.
I'm right there with you. Amen.
This was excellent, my friend.
Thank you, Eric.
I would like to have you come back on at another time. We'll do this again.
Yeah, and just pick another topic, or pick the same topic with my memory. I'll forget what we talked about, and we can do it all over again.
We'll dive into more stories. So you have a ton of them there.
I do have a few.
We'll talk about. But it means the world to me, Jon, that you were here.
Thank you. Thank you.
I've been a fan. I've been a fan of you. I've been a fan of your station. I mentioned my parents. You've been part of our life. Wow. So, and I know I'm speaking for so many people out there in Western Pennsylvania and beyond that are watching this, that are going to say the same thing. Thank you, Jon.
Well, thank you.
And enjoy your retirement. My
thank
goodness.
you. I'll do that.
Stay away from extreme sports.
At 65 and a half, it's probably time I give those up. Thank you, Eric. It's been a pleasure, and I am now a fan of yours officially.
It means the world to me. Thank you, buddy.
You got it.
We'll see you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
You did your homework. That was great.
Oh, thank you.
Nice stuff. Yeah, you did.
Well, I cannot tell you what it means.